The moment she said it, the room didn't just go quiet, it collapsed. I'm done with this marriage. Her voice wasn't shaking. No hesitation, no crack in her tone, just flat, final, like she was commenting on the weather instead of dismantling 10 years of my life. I remember staring at her, waiting for something, anything, that suggested this was a joke. A test. A bad day spilling over into something she didn't mean. But there she stood, arms folded, eyes cold, already halfway checked out of the life we built together. And the worst part, she looked relieved. I nodded once. That was it, no shouting, no begging, no dramatic speech like you see in movies, just a single nod like she'd told me dinner was ready. Because in that moment, something inside me didn't break. It switched off. The house felt different after that. Not empty, worse, occupied by ghosts. Every corner held a memory I didn't ask for. The couch where we used to fall asleep watching late-night shows. The kitchen where she danced barefoot while cooking Sunday breakfast. The hallway where she once ran into my arms after getting promoted, laughing like life had finally given her something good. Now, she walked past me like I was furniture. We moved around each other with surgical precision. No accidental touches, no shared glances, just silence, thick, suffocating silence that pressed against my chest every time I stepped inside. You think anger would come first. It didn't. Confusion did. Because this wasn't how we were, this wasn't us. Or at least, I thought it was. 3 weeks before she dropped that sentence like a guillotine, we were celebrating our anniversary. 10 years. A whole decade of inside jokes, road trips, late-night talks about dreams we swore we'd chase together. I had planned everything. Reserved a table at that rooftop restaurant she loved, the one with the skyline view and those overpriced candles she always said were worth it for the vibe. I even wore the shirt she picked out for me last Christmas, the one she said made me look dangerously handsome. She showed up late. 43 minutes late, to be exact. I remember checking my watch over and over, trying not to let irritation ruin the night. When she finally walked in, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Sorry, work was crazy, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. I believed her. Of course I did. That's what you do when you trust someone. You fill in the gaps with excuses that protect them. We ordered wine, talked about surface-level things. Work, bills, a neighbor's dog that wouldn't stop barking, but the deeper stuff, the real connection. It felt like trying to grab smoke. I reached for her hand across the table. She hesitated. Just for a second. But I felt it. And once you feel something like that, you can't unfeel it. Looking back now, the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. Late nights at work that stretched longer than usual. Phone calls she'd take in the other room. That subtle shift in how she looked at me, not with love, but with distance. Like I was already part of her past, and she just hadn't said it out loud yet. One night, I asked her directly, "Is everything okay with us?" She didn't even look up from her phone. Yeah, why wouldn't it be? That should have been my answer. But I let it go. Because the truth is, I wasn't ready for the alternative. Back in the present, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the sink full of dishes we both pretended didn't exist. She walked in, grabbed a glass of water, and turned to leave. "Hey," I said. She paused, barely. "What?" No softness, no curiosity, just impatience. I swallowed. "How long have you felt this way?" "A beat." Then she shrugged. "I don't know, a while." "A while?" Do you know how vague that is? A while could mean weeks, months, years. A while meant she had already lived through the end of our marriage, while I was still trying to keep it alive. I let out a quiet breath, "And you didn't think to tell me." She turned back, leaning against the counter, arms crossed again. That defensive posture I was starting to hate. "I didn't want to deal with this," she said, gesturing vaguely between us. "The drama, the conversations, I checked out." Checked out. Like this was a hotel stay she didn't enjoy. Like I was some temporary inconvenience. Something inside my chest tightened, but I didn't let it show. Not anymore. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling. listening to the faint hum of the air conditioner and the occasional buzz of her phone lighting up the darkness. She was texting someone. I didn't have to see the screen to know. The rhythm was different, quick replies, pauses, then typing again, a pattern I hadn't seen from her in months. Funny how you notice these things when it's already too late. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse. Her face was lit by the glow of the screen. And she was smiling. Not the polite, forced smile she gave me lately. A real one. Soft, effortless, alive. I felt it then. Not suspicion. Not even jealousy. Clarity. The next morning, she was already gone when I woke up. No note, no message, just an empty side of the bed and the faint scent of her perfume lingering like a cruel reminder. I got up, went through the motions, shower, coffee, work. But my mind wasn't there. It was replaying everything. Every moment, every sign, every time I chose comfort over truth. By the time I got home that evening, I wasn't the same man who had nodded quietly the day before. Something had shifted. Not anger. Not yet. But awareness. And awareness is dangerous. Because once you see the truth, you can't pretend anymore. She walked in around 8 p.m. Dressed differently. Not work clothes, something nicer. Too nice for someone who claimed she was just working late these past few weeks. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched her. The way she avoided eye contact. The way she moved quickly, like she didn't want to be questioned. "Where were you?" I finally asked. She froze for half a second. Then recovered. "Out. Out." That was her answer. I nodded slowly, stepping closer. "With who?" Now she looked at me. And for the first time since all this started, there was something in her eyes. Not guilt. Not fear. Annoyance. "Why does it matter?" she said. I let that sit in the air between us. Why does it matter? 10 years. A marriage. A life. Reduced to a question she didn't even feel obligated to answer. I took a deep breath. And then I said something that surprised even me. "You're right," I said quietly. "It doesn't." Her expression flickered. Just slightly. Because she expected a fight. A reaction. Something. But I gave her nothing. And in that moment, the balance shifted. Just a little. She didn't realize it yet. But the man who nodded silently when she said she was done was already starting to disappear. And in his place, someone else was waking up. The silence after that night wasn't the same kind of silence. Before, it was heavy, suffocating, filled with questions I was too afraid to ask. Now, it was controlled, measured, intentional. I stopped chasing her attention. Stopped asking where she was going, who she was texting, why she came home smelling like a different version of herself. Not because I didn't care anymore, but because I cared differently. There's a dangerous kind of calm that comes when you finally accept the truth. Not the version you wanted, but the one staring you in the face, daring you to do something about it. And I had accepted it. She was already gone. She just hadn't packed her bags yet. A few days passed. We barely spoke. If someone walked into our house, they'd think we were strangers sharing rent, not a married couple with a decade of history buried under the same roof. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. No reason, just instinct. The house was quiet, lights dimmed except for the soft glow coming from the living room. I stepped inside, dropped my keys on the counter, and that's when I heard it. Her laugh. Soft, intimate. The kind she used to save for me. I moved slowly, each step deliberate, until I reached the edge of the hallway. She was on the couch. Phone pressed to her ear. Legs tucked under her like she always did when she was comfortable, when she felt safe. "Stop," she whispered, smiling. "You're actually making me blush." That was it. That one sentence. It didn't shatter me. It confirmed me. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, listening, not out of desperation but out of clarity. I wasn't eavesdropping anymore. I was witnessing. I know, she continued, her voice softer now. I wish things were different. A pause. Then a quiet laugh. Yeah, me too. Something inside me settled into place. Like the final piece of a puzzle I didn't want to complete. I stepped forward just enough for my shadow to fall across the room. She looked up, and everything changed. Her smile dropped instantly. The warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by something sharper, colder. Oh, she said quickly, pulling the phone away. I'll call you later. She hung up before the other person could respond. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt charged, like a storm waiting for permission to break. Who was that? I asked. Not aggressive, not emotional. Just direct. She stood up, brushing invisible lint off her shirt. A friend. I almost laughed. A friend. Funny how that word becomes a shield when the truth feels too ugly to say out loud. I tilted my head slightly. You don't laugh like that with your friends. Her jaw tightened. Why are you acting like this? She snapped. You said it doesn't matter. There it was. She remembered. I nodded slowly. You're right, it doesn't. I stepped closer, just enough to close the distance, but not enough to touch her. But let's not insult each other by pretending. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Not guilty. Not ashamed. Just caught off guard. You don't get to suddenly care, she said, her voice defensive now. Not after everything. That stopped me. Not because it hurt, but because it was interesting. Everything, I repeated. What exactly is everything? She scoffed, throwing her hands up. You wouldn't understand. Try me, I almost said. But I didn't. Instead, I just watched her. Really watched her. And that's when it hit me. She had already rewritten the story in her head. In her version, I wasn't the man who loved her, supported her, built a life with her. I was the problem. The reason she checked out. The justification she needed to walk away without guilt. It's easier to betray someone when you convince yourself they deserve it. Say it, I said quietly. She frowned. What? The truth, I replied. Just once, no filters, no excuses. Her eyes locked onto mine. And for a second, I thought she might actually do it. But then she looked away. I don't owe you that, she said. There it was. Not I can't. Not I don't know how. I don't owe you. 10 years. Reduced to a debt she refused to pay. I took a step back. And smiled. Not out of happiness, but out of realization. You're right, I said softly. You don't. And just like that, whatever invisible thread was still tying me to her snapped. That night, I didn't sleep in the bedroom. Not out of anger. Out of choice. I took a blanket, lay down on the couch, and stared at the ceiling for hours. But this time, I wasn't replaying memories. I was planning. Not revenge, not yet. Just recalibration. Because the truth is, I had spent years building a life that included her in every decision, every plan, every dream. Now, I had to figure out what my life looked like without her in it. And that realization was both terrifying and strangely freeing. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was still, quiet in a way that felt different. Lighter. I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and left without a word. I didn't tell her where I was going. Didn't leave a note. Didn't send a message. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. I drove aimlessly at first. No destination, just movement. The city slowly waking up around me, coffee shops opening, people rushing to work, life continuing as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I pulled over near a quiet overlook, the skyline stretching out in front of me. And I just sat there, thinking. Not about her. About me. About the man I had become, and the man I needed to be now. Because here's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't just break your heart. It forces you to confront every version of yourself that allowed it to happen. The compromises. The silences. The moments you ignored your instincts just to keep the peace. I wasn't innocent in that. And admitting that was the first step toward something new. When I got back home, she was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, coffee in hand. She looked up as I walked in. "Where were you?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I walked past her, grabbed a glass, poured myself some water. Then I turned to her. And for the first time since all this started, I saw it. A flicker of something in her eyes. Concern. Not because she cared about me, but because she felt the shift. People always do. They can sense when they're losing control of the narrative. "I went out," I said calmly. Her brows furrowed. "That's it." I shrugged. "That's it." She stared at me, searching for something, emotion, anger, weakness. I gave her none. And that's when it happened. The smallest crack in her armor. "What's going on with you?" she asked, her voice softer now. I met her gaze, held it, and said the one thing she wasn't ready to hear. "I'm just catching up," I replied. Her expression faltered. Catching up to what? I took a slow breath. To reality. She didn't respond. Didn't argue. Didn't deflect. Because deep down, she knew exactly what I meant. And for the first time since she said she was done, she wasn't the one in control of how this story was going to end. Not anymore. She started watching me after that. Not openly. Not in a way she'd ever admit. But I saw it, in the small pauses when I entered a room, in the way her eyes lingered a second longer than usual, in the subtle shift of her posture like she was trying to read something that no longer made sense to her. Because I had changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough. I stopped asking questions. That was the first thing she noticed. No more "Where are you going?" No more "When will you be back?" No more "Who is that on the phone?" Silence can be many things. But in the right hands, it becomes power. And she felt it. A week passed. Then another. We existed in the same space, but on completely different frequencies. She came and went as she pleased. So did I. But the difference, I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to come back to me. I was already walking away, just slowly enough for her to realize it. One night, she came home later than usual. Around midnight. I was sitting in the living room, laptop open, the faint glow of the screen casting shadows across the walls. I didn't look up when she walked in. But I heard everything. The slight stumble in her step. The way she quietly closed the door, like she didn't want to wake someone who wasn't even asleep. The faint scent of perfume, not the one she used to wear for me. "You're still up?" she asked. I kept my eyes on the screen. "Yeah." A pause. "You've been staying up a lot lately." "Work," I replied simply. That wasn't entirely a lie. But it wasn't the full truth either. Because what I was really working on was my exit. I had started separating things. Not physically, not yet. But mentally. Financial accounts I once shared without a second thought, I reviewed them. Plans we made together, I rewrote them. Dreams that had her name attached to them, I erased and replaced. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. Because you can't rebuild your life while still living in the blueprint of a broken one. She walked into the kitchen, poured herself water, then leaned against the counter. Watching me. I could feel it. "You've been distant," she said. That almost made me smile. Distant. Now I was the one creating space. Interesting how that works. "I guess I learned from the best," I said calmly. Silence. Thick. Heavy. She pushed off the counter, stepping closer. "That's not fair." I finally looked up. Met her eyes. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't see certainty in them. I saw discomfort. "Fair," I repeated. "You want to talk about fair now?" Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Because there wasn't a version of this where she came out clean. "I didn't plan for things to happen like this," she said finally, her voice quieter now. There it was. Not an apology. Not accountability. Just a soft attempt to ease her own conscience. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Things, I asked. She hesitated. You know what I meant. No. I didn't. And I wasn't going to make it easier for her by filling in the blanks. Say it, I said. Her jaw tightened. I met someone, she admitted. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Real. Final. And yet, I felt nothing. No shock. No anger. Just confirmation. How long? I asked. She looked away. A few months. A few months. So even before our anniversary. Before the rooftop dinner. Before the hesitation when I reached for her hand. She was already somewhere else with someone else. I nodded slowly. Does he know you're married? That hit something. I saw it in the way her shoulders stiffened. It's not like that, she said quickly. I almost laughed. It's never like that, is it? Until it is. You said you were done, I reminded her, so what exactly are you waiting for? Her eyes snapped back to mine. What do you mean? I closed my laptop, stood up, and faced her fully. I mean, if you've already moved on, I said, my voice steady, why are you still here? That question. It landed. Hard. Because for the first time, she didn't have an immediate answer. I don't know, she said. Honest. Finally. I guess I just needed time. Time. Another vague word people hide behind when they don't want to face the consequences of their choices. Time for what? I asked. To figure out if he's worth it, or to keep me as a backup in case he's not. Her face changed instantly. That's not fair, she said again, sharper this time. There it is again, I replied. Fair. I took a step closer. Not aggressive. Just present. You don't get to talk about fairness, I said quietly. Not after you checked out of this marriage without saying a word and started building something new behind my back. Her eyes glistened slightly. But I didn't let that distract me. Because tears don't always mean regret. Sometimes, they just mean discomfort. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said. That sentence. That classic sentence. I shook my head slightly. But you did, I replied, and not by accident. Silence again. But this time, it felt different. Less like avoidance. More like exposure. For a moment, we just stood there. Two people who once knew everything about each other. Now standing on opposite sides of a truth that couldn't be undone. I think you should leave, I said finally. Her eyes widened. What? I think you should leave, I repeated. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Because the man standing in front of her now wasn't the one who would have begged her to stay. You're serious? She asked. Very. And where am I supposed to go? I shrugged slightly. You said you met someone. That hit deeper than anything else I'd said. Because now, her choices had direction. Consequences. Reality. This is still my house too, she said, her voice defensive again. I nodded. Legally, sure, but emotionally, you left a long time ago. She opened her mouth to argue. Then stopped. Because she knew. Deep down. She knew. I need time to figure things out, she said again, softer now. I looked at her for a long moment. And then I said something that changed everything. You already had time, I said. You just used it on someone else. That was it. That was the moment the illusion shattered completely. No more pretending. No more gray areas. Just truth. Sharp. Unforgiving. She grabbed her phone, her keys, her bag. Movements quick, frustrated, uncertain. I can't deal with this right now, she muttered. I didn't stop her. Didn't follow. Didn't say another word. I just stood there and watched her walk out of the house we built together. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Not dramatic. Not loud. But final enough. And just like that, she was gone. I stood there for a while, listening to the silence. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It didn't suffocate me. It felt clear. I walked over to the window, watching as her car pulled out of the driveway and disappeared into the night. And instead of feeling loss, I felt something else. Something unexpected. Control. Because for the first time since she said she was done, I wasn't reacting anymore. I wasn't trying to understand her. I wasn't chasing closure. I had already found it. But here's the thing about moments like that. The real story doesn't end when they leave. That's just where it begins. Because while she was out there, figuring out her next move, I was already planning mine. And unlike her, mine didn't involve looking back. The house felt bigger after she left. Not physically, but in a way that made every step echo just a little louder, every breath feel just a little deeper. For the first time in years, there was no tension waiting for me in the next room, no unspoken resentment hanging in the air, no quiet disappointment sitting across from me at the dinner table. Just space. And space. It forces you to face yourself. The first few days were strange. Not painful. Not chaotic. Just unfamiliar. I'd wake up out of habit, expecting to hear her moving around in the kitchen, expecting the soft clink of a coffee mug, the low hum of her voice on a call, the life we used to share playing in the background. But there was nothing. And instead of feeling empty, it felt honest. I didn't reach out. Not once. No texts, no calls, no just checking in. Because I wasn't checking in anymore. I had checked out of the version of my life where I waited for someone to choose me. A week passed. Then 2. And in that time, something unexpected happened. I started to remember who I was before her. Before the compromises. Before the quiet acceptance of things that didn't sit right with me. I went back to the gym. Not out of revenge. Out of discipline. Early mornings, cold air, the sound of weights hitting the floor, the kind of routine that rebuilds more than just your body. It rebuilds your mind. Work changed too. Not because my job suddenly became better, but because I showed up differently. Focused, sharp, present. There's something about losing something important that either breaks you or refines you. And I had no interest in breaking. People started noticing. Coworkers. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months. Even strangers. "You look different," one of them said. I just smiled. Because I was. Then, one evening, about 3 weeks after she left, my phone lit up. Her name. I stared at it for a moment. Not with longing. Not with anger. Just curiosity. Then I answered. "Hey," she said. Her voice sounded different. Softer. Uncertain. "Hey," I replied. A pause. I didn't think you'd pick up. I leaned back in my chair. Why wouldn't I? Another pause. "I don't know, I just thought maybe you'd be mad." Mad. That word felt so distant now. "I'm not mad," I said calmly. And I meant it. "I've been thinking," she continued. Of course you have. They always start with that, I thought. Out loud I just said, about. A breath on the other end. See. There it was. "I miss you," she said. Simple. Direct. Late. I didn't respond right away. Not to punish her, but because I was actually thinking. Not about what I wanted to say, but about what was true. "Do you?" I finally asked. She hesitated. "Yeah, I do." I nodded slightly, even though she couldn't see me. "What do you miss?" I asked. That question. It matters. Because people don't always miss you. They miss what you gave them. "I miss how things used to be," she said. "How you used to look at me, how you cared." There it was. Not me. The version of me that made her feel good. I exhaled slowly. "Things used to be that way because I thought we were on the same page," I said. "We were." Silence. I made a mistake, she said quietly. And just like that, we arrived at the part of the story where regret shows up. Not always because of what was lost, but because of what didn't work out the way they expected. Did you? I asked. No sarcasm. No edge. Just a question. Yes, she said. I thought I wanted something different, something more. And, I asked. Her voice dropped slightly. It wasn't what I thought it would be. Of course it was. What happened? I asked. She let out a small, bitter laugh. He's not you. That almost made me shake my head. Not out of pride, but because of how predictable it was. He's not supposed to be, I replied. He's someone you chose instead. That landed. I could feel it through the silence. I know, she said, and I messed that up. Messed that up? Interesting choice of words. Not I hurt you. Not I betrayed you. Just she made a bad decision. For herself. I've been thinking about coming back, she said. And there it was. The real reason for the call. Not closure. Not apology. Return. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on my knees. And for the first time in this entire conversation, I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was clear. You want to come back? I asked. Yeah, she said quickly. I think we can fix things. I think we can start over. Start over? Like this was a reset button. Like the past few months were just a glitch in the system. I stood up, walking slowly toward the window, looking out at the quiet street. Cars passing, people living their lives. Moving forward. Always forward. Let me ask you something, I said. Okay. If he had been everything you thought he was, I paused, choosing my words carefully, would you be calling me right now? Silence. Long. Heavy. Honest. She didn't answer. Because she didn't have to. The truth was already there. That's what I thought, I said softly. Wait, she started, a hint of panic creeping into her voice. That's not fair. I'm calling because I realized what I had. No, I interrupted calmly. You're calling because what you chose didn't work. That distinction. It matters. I still love you, she said quickly. Maybe she believed that. Maybe she didn't. But love, real love, doesn't disappear quietly while you build something else with someone new. I took a deep breath. Not because this was hard, but because I wanted to say this right. You don't get to come back just because you finally see my value, I said. You had it. You chose something else. Her breathing on the other end got heavier. People make mistakes, she said. Yes, I replied, they do. Another pause. And then I added, but not all mistakes deserve a second chance. That broke something. I could hear it. Please, she said, her voice cracking now. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. I'll do anything. Anything. Another word people use when they're desperate, not when they're committed. I closed my eyes for a second. Not to escape, but to make sure I was grounded in what I was about to say next. Because this was the moment that defined everything. I believe you're sorry, I said. And I did. I believe you regret what happened. Also true. But I don't believe you'd be saying any of this if things had gone the way you hoped they would. Silence. Again. Because again. It was the truth. And I can't build a future, I continued, on a foundation where I was your second option. Her breath hitched. Please don't say that. But it's true, I said gently, and you know it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. And in that silence, everything that needed to be understood was understood. I don't know what to do, she whispered. That was the first honest thing she'd said in a long time. I looked out the window one last time. Then I said the words that finally closed the door she thought she could reopen. Figure it out, I said calmly. Just like I had too. And before she could say anything else, I ended the call. The line went dead. And with it, so did whatever was left of us, For a few seconds after I ended the call, I just stood there. Phone still in my hand. Screen dark. Heart steady. No shaking. No second guessing. No sudden wave of regret crashing over me like it used to when things went wrong between us. Just silence. The kind that doesn't feel empty. The kind that feels earned. I placed my phone down on the table and exhaled slowly. That was it. No dramatic ending. No last words filled with emotion. No cinematic goodbye where someone runs back through the door. Just a decision. And sometimes, that's more powerful than anything else. I didn't hear from her again that night. Or the next day. Or the day after that. And for the first time since all of this began, I didn't wonder if I would. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. That's not how this works. There were still moments. Random ones. Driving past places we used to go. Hearing songs that carried memories I didn't ask to keep. Catching myself reaching for my phone to tell her something, before remembering there was no her to tell anymore. But those moments, they passed. Because they were memories, not anchors. Weeks turned into months. And somewhere in that time, I stopped measuring my life by what I had lost, and started building it around what I still had. I traveled. Not far at first. Just small trips, quiet places, time away from everything that used to feel familiar. I learned how to enjoy my own company again. How to sit in silence without feeling like something was missing. How to exist without needing someone else to validate it. I met new people. Not in a rush. Not trying to replace anything. Just naturally. Conversations that didn't feel forced. Connections that didn't come with history attached. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. One evening, months later, I ran into someone who knew both of us. We talked for a bit, caught up on life. And then, casually, they mentioned her. She moved out of the city, they said. Things didn't really work out for her after everything. I nodded. Not out of indifference, but out of acceptance. Do you ever talk to her? They asked. I shook my head, no. They looked at me for a second, like they were trying to figure out if that answer carried pain. It didn't. Not anymore. That night I went home, poured myself a drink, and sat by the window. The same spot where I stood the night she called me, asking to come back. Funny how life circles back like that. Same place. Different person. I thought about everything. Not in a way that hurt, but in a way that made sense. The beginning. The middle. The end. And more importantly, what came after. Because here's the truth, no one tells you when your world falls apart. It's not the ending that defines you. It's what you do once it's over. She thought walking away would set her free. Maybe it did for a while. Maybe chasing something new felt exciting, different, alive. But freedom without clarity. It's just another form of confusion. And me. I thought losing her would break me. That I'd be stuck replaying memories, questioning my worth, wondering what I could have done differently. But losing her forced me to find myself. I stood up, walked over to the mirror, and looked at the man staring back at me. Same face. Same eyes. But not the same person. Not the one who ignored red flags. Not the one who stayed quiet just to keep the peace. Not the one who thought love meant holding on, no matter what it cost. This version of me understood something deeper. That love isn't proven by how much you endure. It's proven by what you're willing to walk away from. A few days later, I made it official. Filed the papers. Signed my name. Closed that chapter legally, the same way I already had emotionally. No hesitation. No doubt. Just finality. And the strange part, I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was reclaiming something. Time moved on. As it always does. And so did I. One morning, I woke up before sunrise. The sky just starting to shift from dark to light. I stepped outside, the cool air hitting my face, and for a moment, I just stood there. Breathing. Present. Alive. No past pulling at me. No unfinished conversations. No what ifs. Just peace. I thought about her one last time. Not with anger. Not with longing. Just acknowledgement. She was a chapter. An important one. But not the whole story. And as the sun finally broke over the horizon, I realized something simple. Something that would have sounded impossible months ago. I didn't hate her. I didn't need her. And I definitely didn't want her back. I turned, walked inside, and closed the door behind me. Not as an ending, but as a beginning. Because the man who nodded once when she said she was done had become someone who no longer needed to be chosen. He chose himself. And that changed everything.